She confronted her groom on their wedding day, and the whole family froze in shock. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 27 years old, and for the last 3 years, I thought I had been living the kind of love story every little girl dreams about. Daniel Hayes was my fiancé, and today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The church was decorated with flowers I had spent months picking out. Every pew was full of smiling faces, relatives and friends who had traveled far to see me walk down the aisle. The air smelled of roses and candles, and the sound of the organ filled the space as guests whispered about how beautiful everything looked. I stood in the back room, wearing the white gown my mother had cried over when I first tried it on. My hair was pinned perfectly, my veil resting gently on my shoulders. The bridesmaids were fussing over last touches, fixing my dress and handing me my bouquet. From the outside, I looked calm. I smiled when someone glanced at me, I thanked them for helping, and I nodded when they told me how stunning I looked. But inside, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My stomach twisted so hard I could barely breathe. I wasn't trembling with nerves the way brides usually do. No, what shook me was what I had found out only hours earlier. I had smiled through makeup, through the photographs, through the jokes, all while something heavy pressed on my chest. Daniel, my groom, was out front greeting guests. I could hear his laugh through the door, that deep, charming sound that had once made me fall in love. People adored him. My parents trusted him. My friends thought I was lucky. If only they knew. If only they saw what I saw. I gripped my bouquet tighter, the stems almost bending under my fingers. My father would come soon, ready to walk me down the aisle. Everyone was expecting a perfect ceremony, but I knew the truth now, and there was no way I could let this day play out the way everyone imagined. The organ music grew louder, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. The bridesmaids whispered, telling me it was time. I took a deep breath, forcing my face into a smile. My father appeared in the doorway, his eyes soft with pride. He didn't notice the way my lips shook, or the way my knuckles were white around the flowers. I slipped my arm into his, steadying myself as the doors opened. Gasps and smiles filled the church as everyone turned to watch me. To them, I was a glowing bride walking toward her future. To me, I was walking toward the moment that would change everything. 3 years earlier, my life had felt completely different. I met Daniel at a charity event downtown. I had only gone because a coworker begged me to join her, and I almost turned around when I saw the crowded hall. But then Daniel walked up to me. He was polite, warm, and had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We ended up talking the entire evening, moving from the noisy floor to a quiet corner, where we laughed over small things like we had known each other forever. He asked for my number that night, and from then on, he became part of my everyday life. Flowers appeared at my door, texts arrived in the morning wishing me luck before work, and calls came in the evening just to hear about my day. It all felt effortless, like I had finally met the man people said was the one. When I introduced him to my parents, Robert and Linda, they welcomed him without hesitation. My father respected his confidence, my mother admired his manners, and both of them said I was lucky to have found someone who treated me so well. Over Sunday dinners, Daniel helped set the table and listened carefully to every story my father told. He didn't just charm me, he charmed my family. His mother, Margaret, treated me as if I was already her daughter-in-law. She would hug me tightly each time I visited, and often reminded me how grateful she was that her son had found me. She spoke about the future openly, already calling me family, long before we were even engaged. I believed I was stepping into something stable, safe, and good. From the outside, everything looked like a fairy tale. We traveled together, celebrated holidays side by side, and shared pictures of smiles that seemed genuine. Friends told me they had never seen me so happy. Neighbors admired how well we fit together. And in quiet moments, Daniel would look at me like I was the center of his world. It was hard not to fall deeper each time, but I remember the first time a shadow crossed that picture. It was late one night when his phone buzzed on the table. I reached to hand it to him, but he grabbed it quickly and said it was nothing. He smiled to soften it, but his eyes were sharper than before. I let it go, convincing myself it was just private work. Then there were the evenings he came home later than planned, offering quick excuses about meetings that ran over or friends he had run into. Sometimes he wouldn't answer my calls, and when I asked about it, he would brush me off with a laugh. If I pressed too hard, he grew defensive, his voice firm in a way that made me shrink back. I told myself those moments didn't matter compared to everything else he gave me. I wanted to believe the man who had once made me feel so special was still the same. But deep down, something unsettled had already begun to grow. The night before the wedding, I could not make myself fall asleep. The house was quiet, but my mind kept racing through every detail of the ceremony, every step I would have to take, every word I would have to say. I got up, walked around, and lay back down again, but the hours passed slowly. Daniel was asleep beside me, his breathing steady, his phone on the nightstand glowing faintly when a new notification lit up the screen. I hadn't meant to look, but the light caught my eye. The name that appeared froze me in place. Chloe Bennett, my maid of honor, my best friend since childhood. She had been the one helping me with every part of this wedding, standing by my side through fittings, decorations, and family stress. The last person I would ever doubt. I reached for the phone, telling myself it was probably nothing, just a reminder about the morning schedule. But the words on the screen made my stomach turn. I can't believe we'll still be sneaking around after tomorrow. Are you sure you can go through with marrying her? The air seemed to leave the room. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might be sick right there on the floor. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping maybe my eyes were playing tricks in the dim light. But the words didn't change. They were clear, and they shattered everything I thought I knew. I sat frozen, my hands shaking so badly I could hardly hold the phone. Then I forced myself to open the conversation. The thread was filled with messages that confirmed the worst. Sweet words, private jokes, and plans that had nothing to do with me. They had been seeing each other, sneaking around behind my back, all while pretending to love and support me. Daniel shifted slightly in his sleep, and panic rushed through me. I knew I couldn't make a sound. My fingers moved quickly, screenshot after screenshot, capturing every word, every proof. My heart pounded in my ears, but I kept going, determined to save everything. I couldn't let him or her twist this around on me. When I finished, I placed the phone back exactly how it had been, careful not to wake him. I pulled the covers up and lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling like my body wasn't even mine anymore. My eyes burned, but no tears came at first. It was as if I had gone numb. Finally, the tears broke through, silent streams that soaked the pillow. My best friend and the man I was supposed to marry had betrayed me together. The two people I trusted most had been lying right to my face. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake and demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I let the anger harden inside me. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. No, I would walk into that church tomorrow with the truth in my hand. They thought they had fooled me. They thought I would never know. But I did. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I did not sleep a single minute that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the messages again, Chloe's words playing in my head like a cruel echo. The pillow was wet from tears, my throat sore from holding back the sobs I didn't dare let out. But as the hours dragged on, the crying slowed, and something else began to take over. If I let myself fall apart, they would win. If I confronted them in private, they could lie, twist it, make me doubt what I had seen. No, they needed to be exposed where no excuse could protect them. By the time the sun came up, my decision was set. I would go through the wedding, every step, every photo, every moment, and then I would end it right where everyone expected the vows to be spoken. They thought I was walking into their game blind, but I wasn't. I had proof, and I had a plan. I got out of bed quietly, went into the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, rimmed red, but behind them there was something I hadn't seen in myself before, a hard edge. I whispered the words I knew I would say later, rehearsing them until I could hear my own voice steady in my head. I pictured their faces, Daniel's shock, Chloe's panic, the silence in the church. I wanted them both to feel the same sting they had given me. Morning passed in a blur. The house filled with noise as bridesmaids arrived, carrying coffee, dresses, and laughter. Everyone thought it was just another wedding morning. Only I knew what was coming. Chloe was the loudest voice in the room, cheerful and bossy as usual. She came over to fix my hair, adjusting curls and smoothing the veil with careful hand. Her smile was bright, her tone playful, as if she hadn't been writing love messages to my fiancé just hours ago. It made my stomach twist, but I stayed quiet, nodding, letting her think I was nervous about the ceremony and nothing more. The more she acted normal, the stronger my anger grew. Every time she leaned close to adjust a pin or touch my shoulder, I wanted to pull away. But I didn't. I let her fuss, let her think she was the loyal maid of honor standing by her best friend. Inside, I was steadying myself. The moment wasn't here yet. I had to keep the mask on until it was. Everyone laughed, took photos, and teased me about becoming a wife. I smiled when I had to, spoke when expected, but my thoughts never left the words I had practiced. I wasn't the same girl who had fallen asleep beside Daniel the night before. I wasn't the bride who would stand at that altar and pretend everything was perfect. No, I was going to be the woman who looked both of them in the eye, in front of everyone they cared about, and told the truth they thought I would never discover. The bells of the church rang out, echoing across the street as the doors opened. Guests rose to their feet, a wave of smiles and turned heads filling the aisle ahead of me. My father stood tall at my side, his hand warm on mine, his face lit with pride. He looked like a man giving his daughter to someone he trusted completely. I held his arm tightly, forcing my lips into a calm smile, though my chest was tight. The aisle stretched long and bright, decorated with flowers and ribbons that I had once chosen with joy. I kept my steps slow, steady, the white fabric of my dress trailing behind me. People whispered softly as I passed, leaning toward each other to admire the moment. To them, it was a picture-perfect wedding. To me, every step was heavier than the last, carrying me closer to the truth I was about to let loose. At the altar, Daniel stood waiting. He was handsome, polished in his suit, his hair combed neatly, his shoulders squared. When his eyes met mine, he smiled wide, that warm, devoted look that had fooled everyone, including me. For a moment, the sight of it nearly broke me again. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have believed it. But now it was nothing but a mask, a performance for the crowd. I reached the altar, and my father placed my hand in Daniel's, giving it a squeeze before stepping aside. Daniel's grip was firm, steady, as if he were trying to reassure me. I glanced at him and nodded, my face calm, though inside I wanted to pull my hand away. The priest welcomed everyone, his voice carrying through the high ceiling of the church. He spoke of love, unity, and the bond of marriage, words that once would have filled me with joy. Now they rang hollow, but I kept my expression composed, eyes fixed forward. The ceremony flowed as it should, the guests listening quietly, waiting for the moment we would exchange vows. When it came, the silence grew deep. Everyone leaned in slightly, watching closely, ready to hear promises of forever. The priest looked at me first. My throat tightened as I felt the weight of all those eyes. I knew this was the moment I had prepared for, the one I had carried in my chest since the night before. Daniel's smile was still there, his gaze steady, his whole body relaxed as if nothing in the world could go wrong. Chloe stood nearby in her dress, holding my bouquet, her face calm and sweet, as if she were only a supportive friend. The sight of her almost made my hands shake. I took a breath, feeling the air burn in my lungs. My voice wavered at the start, but I forced myself to hold steady. This wasn't just about vows anymore. This was the moment everything would break open, the moment the truth would leave my lips and no one in this church would be able to ignore it. The priest looked at me, waiting for my vow. My lips parted, but instead of the words he expected, I slipped my hand into the bouquet I was holding. Tucked between the stems were the folded pages I had hidden there that morning. My fingers shook slightly as I pulled them out. The sound of paper crackling in the silence made people shift in their seats, curious. Daniel glanced at me with confusion, his smile faltering for the first time. Chloe, standing only a few feet away, tilted her head, her expression tight, as if she already knew what I held. I faced the crowd, holding the papers up so everyone could see I had something in my hand. My voice came out low at first, but it carried through the quiet church. Before I say I do, I think everyone here deserves to know what Daniel has really been doing with Chloe. The words dropped like a stone. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the sound of gasps rippled through the pews. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. A child twisted to look at his parents. Whispers starting in every corner of the room. Daniel reached out, trying to touch my arm. "Emily," he started, but I pulled away sharply. My eyes locked on the paper. I unfolded the first page and began to read aloud. The words were Chloe's. Her message to him from the night before, printed in black and white. "I can't believe we'll still be sneaking around after tomorrow. Are you sure you can go through with marrying her?" The church fell into stunned silence again. Chloe's face drained of color, her lips parting as though she might faint. Daniel's jaw tightened, his mouth opening, but no sound came. Behind me, I heard my mother let out a sharp cry, the sound breaking into sobs as she covered her face with her hand. I kept reading, flipping to the next page, exposing their words, their secret promises, their lies. The voices in the crowd grew louder, people turning to one another in disbelief. Some shook their heads, others muttered curses under their breath. "Stop this," Daniel hissed, his voice strained, his hand reaching for the papers. I stepped back, holding them higher so he couldn't take them. His face twisted between anger and desperation. Chloe tried to speak, her voice shaking. "Emily, it's not what you think. Not what I think." I cut her off, my voice stronger now. "It's written right here in your own words." From the first row, my father rose to his feet. His voice boomed louder than the priest's had moments earlier. "Is this true?" His face was red, his fists clenched, his whole body trembling with fury. "Daniel, answer me now." The church erupted, voices colliding, people standing, some pointing at Daniel and Chloe, others covering their mouths in shock. And through it all, I stood tall at the altar, the papers in my hand, no longer the quiet bride but the woman who had torn the mask off in front of them all. Daniel finally found his voice, though it cracked as he spoke. "This isn't what it looks like. Emily, please, you're blowing this out of proportion." Those texts don't mean what you think. His eyes darted to the crowd, desperate, searching for someone to believe him. Chloe and I, we were just joking. It was harmless. You're embarrassing yourself. His words fell flat. The church was silent except for the sound of people whispering to one another. No one looked convinced. Every guest had heard the messages read out loud. The evidence was there in black and white, and his excuses sounded weak against it. Chloe stepped forward quickly, her face pale but her tone sharp, trying to take control. Emily, listen to me. You've got it wrong. Daniel and I, we were only talking. Nothing ever happened. You know me, I would never hurt you. You're like my sister. She forced a smile, her hands shaking as she reached out as though she could calm me with touch. I pulled back, lifting another page. Don't you dare lie to me now, Chloe. Not here. Not in front of everyone. My voice cut through the air as I read another line aloud, this one full of affection and secrets shared between them. The gasps grew louder, the whispers sharper. The lie she had just told was exposed before it had even settled. Her smile collapsed. She stood frozen, her arms limp at her sides, her eyes darting toward the exit like she wished she could disappear. From the front row, Margaret, Daniel's mother, lowered her head into her hand. Her body trembled as she whispered something no one could hear. Shame pressed heavy on her shoulders. She couldn't even look at me, at her son, or at Chloe. I turned, taking in the faces of the people I loved. Some were crying, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others glaring at the two who had betrayed me. The weight of it all pressed down on the church, filling it with thick silence between the bursts of murmurs. Daniel tried again, his voice rising, almost angry now. Enough, Emily. Stop this. We can talk later, not here. You don't have to do this in front of everyone. His words came sharp, but his face betrayed the panic he could no longer hide. I held his gaze for a long moment, then set the bouquet down on the altar with steady hand. The papers rested on top of it, the truth laid bare for everyone to see. My chest lifted with a deep breath as I spoke the words that had been burning inside me all night. I will not marry a liar. The sound carried through the church, final and unshakable. No one moved. No one spoke. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped, every single person frozen in the weight of what had just been said. The silence after my words stretched so long it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Then slowly, I lifted the edge of my gown with both hands. My heels clicked softly against the floor as I turned, not toward the priest, not toward the man waiting for me at the altar, but away from him. The aisle that had carried me forward only minutes ago now became my path out. For a moment no one moved, as though they weren't sure what they were seeing. Then I felt my father at my side. He stepped forward without hesitation, his strong arm sliding beneath mine, steadying me as I walked. His jaw was tight, his eyes forward, and his presence alone told me I wasn't leaving alone. Behind us, Daniel's voice cracked through the stillness. Emily, wait, please. His words tumbled out in panic, echoing through the church. I didn't stop, didn't turn my head. The sound of his desperation only pushed me forward faster. The man who had once been my safe place now sounded like a stranger begging for something he no longer deserved. The guests shifted in their seats, heads turning, whispers rising. Some gasped, others muttered softly, but no one dared step into my path. The air was heavy, the scent of flowers now sharp, almost bitter. Then I heard quick footsteps behind me. Chloe. Her voice rang out, frantic. Emily, please, let me explain. She tried to rush down the aisle, but before she could reach me, two of the bridesmaids stepped forward. They blocked her, hands outstretched, holding her back. One of them shook her head firmly, her voice low but cutting. Don't. Not now. Chloe's cries followed me, desperate and shrill, but they faded as I walked further away. I could feel the stares on my back, every eye in the church watching the bride who would not bow, who would not pretend. My tears slipped down my cheeks, hot and steady, but I kept my head high. I wasn't walking out in shame. I wasn't hiding. Every step was strength. Every tear was proof of how much I had endured and how much I refused to accept any longer. The doors of the church came into view. The light spilled in from outside, brighter than the candles, brighter than the chandeliers. It looked like an escape, like air after drowning. My father pushed the doors open wide, and together we stepped out into the open world. Behind us, Daniel shouted one last time, his voice broken. Emily! But it was too late. The doors closed with a heavy thud, sealing him and his lies inside. I stood on the steps, breathing in the cool air, my chest rising and falling fast. My dress clung to me, heavy, but my body felt lighter than it had in days. My father's hand was still on my arm, steady and firm. For the first time, I realized that walking away wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something stronger. Weeks passed, but the memory of that day stayed sharp in my mind. The scene in the church had spread quickly through town. It seemed like everyone knew what had happened, and the story took on a life of its own. I didn't have to explain myself. The truth had been witnessed by everyone in that room. Daniel's life began to unravel almost immediately. Word reached his workplace, and soon after, he was let go. His company valued trust and reputation, and neither could be attached to him anymore. I heard through a neighbor that he tried to defend himself, saying it was a misunderstanding, but no one was convinced. His smile and charm didn't work the way they used to. He walked around town with lowered eyes, the weight of his choices pressing on him. Chloe didn't fare much better. For years she had been the golden girl in our circle, the friend who could walk into any room and be welcomed. But now people avoided her. Invitations stopped coming. Parents whispered about her to their daughters. Old friends turned their backs. She had thought she could betray me in secret and still keep her place in everyone's lives. But betrayal has a way of sticking to a person like a stain. She couldn't scrub it away. Through all of it, my parents stayed close to me. My mother held me when the nights felt too heavy, brushing my hair back like she had when I was little. My father spoke less, but his steady presence was louder than words. One evening at dinner, he looked at me across the table and said simply, "You did the bravest thing I've ever seen." My throat tightened, but I nodded, knowing his pride was real. Then one afternoon, a letter came in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was careful, shaky. Inside, Margaret's words spilled across the page. She apologized for her son, admitting she had raised him better and felt ashamed of what he had done. She thanked me for showing strength, even though it broke her heart. Her words were heavy with sorrow, but they were also honest. I read the letter twice, then tucked it away, not out of anger, but because I didn't yet know how to respond. Even with their support, the nights were still hard. I would wake up sometimes and expect to see Daniel beside me, only to feel the cold space where he used to be. My chest would ache with the memory of what I had lost, not just him, but the picture of the future I thought was mine. Yet in the quiet hours, another feeling grew. I hadn't let them walk over me. I hadn't let their lies define my life. The heartbreak was real, but so was the healing. Each day I rose, taught my students, cooked my own meals, and breathed a little easier. Each day, I proved to myself that I could keep moving forward. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town, far from the places that reminded me of Daniel and Chloe. The space was quiet, with sunlight that filled the living room in the mornings and a balcony that overlooked a busy street. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Every box I unpacked felt like a step into a new life, each picture on the wall a small claim of independence. Work became my anchor. My students kept me busy, their energy and laughter pulling me out of my own thoughts. Planning lessons, grading papers, and watching their progress gave me purpose. In the classroom, I didn't feel like the bride who walked away. I was simply Miss Carter, the teacher who cared about them. Their innocence reminded me that the world wasn't all betrayal, that trust and honesty still existed. In the evenings, the quiet could be hard, but I learned to fill it with small routine. I cooked for myself, I read books I had once put aside, and I walked through the park when the air was cool. Slowly, the emptiness inside me made room for peace. The pain of what Daniel and Chloe had done hadn't vanished, but it no longer ruled me. There were still moments when the memories caught me off guard. I would hear a song we once danced to or pass by the cafe where we used to sit together, and a sharp ache would rise in my chest. But I let myself feel it, and then I let it go. I knew those feelings were part of healing, not signs of weakness. One evening, months later, I glanced at the calendar and realized the date. It would have been my wedding anniversary, the day I was supposed to celebrate a life built on love. For a moment, I sat frozen, unsure of how to face it. Then I made a choice. I dressed nicely, went to a small restaurant, and ordered dinner for one. As I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, a genuine smile. It wasn't forced, and it wasn't for anyone else. It was mine. I raised my glass of water and whispered softly to myself, almost like a toast, to new beginnings. That night, I realized betrayal may cut deep, but silence would have cut deeper. If I had kept quiet in that church, if I had swallowed the truth to save face, I would have lost myself. Speaking out had hurt, but it had also freed me. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up in the moment everyone expects you to stay silent. I didn't just save myself that day, I saved my future.